He's in the zone. Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, back in the chat. Back in the chat. I'm so sorry. Share your screen. I am. Oh my. Oh my freaking god. Oh my. Oh my. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh, guys. I'm so sorry. I'm an idiot. I'm an absolute moron. I am so sorry. Okay, let's start over. Let's pretend none of this happened. I am so sorry. Tom will probably call this house and say, "See, I told you." Um, I love you guys for letting me know I'm an utter idiot. I am so sorry. So back to CrowdStrike. Let's start over. Pretend none of this happened. I am so sorry. So oh my God. So this is the post I was showing right before the market opened up. Thank you guys. I love you much. You're amazing. You're amazing viewer. You're just awesome altogether. I am so sorry. So don't worry, the recording will be shorter. So um I was expecting, I was looking at this, this structure implied to me, at least we're not going to have all the annoying alerts, it just reminded me. So I was looking at this structure, looking at the momentum building up on the stochastic RSI. It seemed as if it's going to build up more momentum upwards, and since we've been overstretched downwards, and those of you who know, this is not an abnormality. The same way we do this on the upside, we can do this on the downside as well. But this formation looked as if we're going to close the gap, right? So I kind of posted. I showed how these supports have been known for quite a while. These supports and resistances that were respecting at that very time, the 338 area, 289 area. They're not perfect. They're ish, right? So you might as well call this 290. Is everybody following so far? This time I'm good. I didn't forget anything. Does this sound good? So that was my post before the market opened. The market opened up, and as we started, you can see basically we continue this formation. So far, so good. But this momentum did not interpret all the way through in such a way that we close the gap. And as I was saying earlier, closing the gap meaning we'll have these columns, this price action moving entirely through this area, basically the 345. If to sort of emphasize this, to highlight, it's this area where the gap opened up, and here the gap, here it's bottom. So basically this is a hole that needs to be filled. Look at it this way. And as I've said earlier, the robotic systems would want to fill it in an almost automatic fashion. Pretty much everything I've described earlier, they're almost magnetized or attracted to do that. Now the problem is, if we're looking at this, for example, if I'm looking sort of at a larger time frame, switching to 4 hours, I'm switching to daily. Remember, the larger the time frame, the more sort of it implies, the more powerful what that implication is towards the price action, right? That actually has a very strong carryover effect. Here you can see the gap again. It's slightly deformed because these candlesticks are they condense part of the price action internally, so the gap will slightly readjust, but still the gap is roughly there. And as you can see on the momentum, as we're significantly in the oversold territory, the same way I tell you guys, once we go overbought, yes, we can dwell in that territory for a while, but generally speaking, this is already prolonged. So very probable here that we're going to start correcting upwards. What does that mean? That means for us that we have roughly enough momentum. Again, those who are more experienced can interpret this, because this does not interpret one-to-one, right? But generally speaking, this does imply that we have enough momentum to go through this process, right? As we move through this almost rhythm of the market, we'll eventually end up closing this gap. So it still seems like it. But there's that but that I've mentioned earlier before. If we're looking at the indices, since we've opened, we've been moving down in general. We're kind of on this downtrend. Yes, we have this hole, this gap that has not been closed. But remember, if we're looking at sort of the larger scale of things, and we look at the larger picture of things, we realize that the S&P and the other indices, the major indices, have had so many holes in them. They look like Swiss cheese at this point. So what is more important? In reality, yes, those of you will say, well, this is closer and on the upside, but remember, also correct, it's on the upside. So we're going to close it at some point in the future anyways. We as investors, traders, doesn't matter. As people who look at technical analysis, we don't want to worry about these because essentially they will get closed at some point. But gaps that we holes that we leave on the bottom imply to us that at some point, not even have to close all of them. Let's pretend we have here, I don't know, 50 gaps, right? So the idea here, and of course it's up for consensus, some technical analysts would argue that we close roughly between 20 around 20% of all gaps per period or per trend. It's a little bit convoluted. I'll be happy to explain that in the community. I'm not going to dive into that, it's too prolonged. But some people would argue 10% of all gaps will get closed. But generally speaking, looking at this structure, we know that even if just to close half of them, looking at the price range, we will have to move significantly lower, right? So we're always, at all given times, unless you're a short seller, worried about these downwards trend, sort of these downwards gaps, far more than we're worried about the upside gaps, because these will get closed eventually. The market is naturally upwards looking, okay? That's just the natural trajectory of the market. Even if we go through certain downturns, even if they're more prolonged than we expect, generally speaking, these will get closed. Do not worry. That's sort of the idea why we say it's all about your endurance, right? It's all about your sort of risk management and how you go through these processes. But those who profit in the market on a larger scale, those who don't wiggle too much, don't jump, don't get too worried about their portfolio. Remember how Baron Rothschild said, buy when the blood is in the streets, even if the blood is your own. A lot of people neglect that part of the quote, which is the most important. Know to focus not on the panic you're experiencing because, well, it feels unpleasant. Sure, that just means you means you should have managed your portfolio slightly differently, which me and Tom and just in general we speak about in the community quite extensively. But you guys probably know, most of you are from the community. Shout out to all of you legends. So overall, sort of looking at the structure and looking at CrowdStrike, because at the end of the day, the focus is here on CrowdStrike, even though it seems on this sort of medium time frame, we have the capability and the potential of closing this, we're still overburdened by the overall conditions that are affected by various forces. Again, as I said, from oil, and those who misconstrue and misunderstand me saying that, oh, that's it, now we're below 80 and everything is fine. That could be very temporary, first of all, and oil at 80 is already bad. That's all. It's known that around 70, oil starts to cut into smaller companies' profit margins as a raw material, as energy in various forms. It also translates, you'd not believe it, but also translates to salaries and everything around you. At the end of the day, it does. Of course, through a longer period of time, but still it does. So, and at 80, it already starts to eat away at profit margins for larger companies. And at 90, it's basically a question of how long can we bear this. So don't misunderstand me in saying, oh, that's it, we're below 80, everything is fine, nice and dandy. In fact, I would probably argue this is very temporary just because of this oil reserve that was found just recently. You can probably just Google it and find it. It's a pretty big reserve, which, yes, a big reserve, a lot of oil, cool, nice and dandy. You realize how much time it will take before, now that we found it, to the point where we actually get the first barrel out? And geopolitical conditions are not too good right now in general towards the prices of oil. I'm just going to say that. I'm just going to skip the whole rant on that thing. But yeah, things are not too great. I haven't mentioned Russia, Ukraine at all. Although, if I have to go political for a second, although I'm going to try and sort of stay away from these topics because people are very sensitive. I gotta say, I've noticed sort of the sentiment and the attitude change in Putin right after it started to seem as if Trump is going to be elected, and sort of his entire attitude about how he would manage this and what he would do about resolving this issue. Putin, instead of going about it I'm gonna conquer everything, screw everybody, pardon my French, I'm gonna do whatever I want. scary dictator. Suddenly he went from that to I'm willing to listen what Trump is there to offer kind of attitude. This is very mellow. Those who don't know Russians, this is a big change. This is a big change. It's basically going from offensive to almost neutral. What about the macroeconomic points like geopolitical stuff, for instance, the presidential election? Again, I don't want to go too political. We don't know whether Biden is really quitting the race. Gene, you're making me go political there. I don't know. It's really uncertain. I know Trump is good for the economy, but I also know that what the Democrats have caused and will have reverberation effects. Look, honestly, you can ask Tim Titan, which now reminds me I need to send him a link. Sorry for that. Um, that sorry, lost my train of thought there. 1 second. Oh yeah, Trump and the whole thing. I told him a while ago that I think that basically Democrats recognized already that they lost, and that was a while back. Hopefully he'll join the stream soon. I forgot to send him a link. Pardon me. So, and I've been saying that because the way it feels to me is that they're burning through money as much as they can, and the reason why they're doing this sort of is because when Trump now will go back into office, he will have a significantly troubling and very difficult situation to deal with and a lot of issues to resolve. And by the time he resolves all of this, people's memory is very short, basically. So they're relying on the idea that by the time next election comes about, they will say, oh, look how bad everything was with Trump, in his first or second year, potentially. But they will forget to mention how he inherited that from them, and they were the actual direct causality to it. So I do think that there will be some effects. I don't want to read into it too early because as much as I'm not gonna be honest, I would prefer it if Trump would win. I personally, I'm more for the Republicans, and the thing is, it's not certain. Nothing is certain, so I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go about it by trying and saying how the geopolitical background, sort of the election outcome will play out on all this. It's too difficult. I have some assumptions. I do have some assumptions, but I do think it's unavoidable that Trump will have to deal with a very difficult economic situation as he goes into office because of all the reasons. Although I am trying to calculate and consider the fact of the matter that a lot of these communist countries and their leaders are very much afraid of what Trump can do, and I do think that when Trump will go into office, I do think some of the geopolitical tensions will subside. I do think, and that will subsequently have good effects on the economic conditions of the U.S. It's inevitable. The more sort of worldwide tensions you have, the more difficult it is for the U.S. to be focused on their own internal issues. The TC. Uh, Look, yes, but it's not gonna. Correct, exactly. That's sort of exactly what I'm saying. But it's not gonna be immediate. There has to be a process, and with all the spending and the defense budget, and we're not certain yet again how things will play out, but I'm very impressed by JD Vance. I'm tremendously impressed. He really spoke about how the conversation has to be broken down into its various pieces, how you have to talk about Israel separately, then talking about Ukraine. The two things are not necessarily involved. How the spending has to be a little bit more controlled. How the European nations have to spend more money in order to justify the American spending on all of this. Yeah. Yes, it will take a bit of time. Yeah, yeah. Okay. The president is side. All right. I think so. Yeah, that's the other thing. Mike. I think the left is so focused. But then again, those are ramblings. Those people here who just came for the technical analysis, I'm so sorry that I sort of deviated. I kind of am done with this. If anybody here was here for that, as I said, the technicals are the technicals, or things, seeing things they're not too great. I still am expecting a downwards trend. But to go back to sort of just rambling about and just hanging out, um, I, the left seemed to almost not notice that Trump is not really a left or right kind of person. I don't think he ever was. He's very kind of center, but the left are abusing sort of this stance of, just because of how the political scenery looks, and you are either on the left or on the right. You cannot really be center kind of thing, right? Because Trump is just a very down to earth, very common sense kind of guy, which at the end of the day, like it or not, it's likable by both sides. Which both sides, the normal people on both sides, just they go with common sense, you know. I'm a kitty meow. All right, kitty, welcome, enjoy. Um, you know what, Mike? Yeah, let me just give you this one thing, make sure, because I think you definitely more than deserve it. Of course, it's not working now. Oh, God damn it. Mike, I'm trying to give you moderatorship here, but it's refusing to work. Go ahead, guys and girls. Questions, anything, just before I drop off. If you wanna, we can go back to technicals. Uh, Whatever you like. Sadly, Mike, it's not working. It is refusing to work. I don't know why. So things are not that great. I mean, I do expect, I'm still looking all in all for the market to continue moving downwards. I know this seems different and sort of contradictory to what I said. It's a little bit more complex than this. Um, Join the community. I'll be more than happy to really break it down and explain, because you need to understand. So the larger scale picture is still very ugly. You see how I kind of went through all the time frames, and when we start to go outwards, it still looks very ugly. And even if it's not going to be with we're not gonna, even if I'm not gonna feel the full brunt of the force of this whole thing, we're still gonna feel a lot of effects. Greg, I believe there is a lot of downside for Intel support around 30 is going to hold. I mean, we can look at Intel individually if you want to. Intel is more of a value asset. You have to look at it objectively, and the downside, even regardless of if it's one of those situations that Tom and I like to mention. Shout out to Tom Nash, the legend, the one and only. Without him, I wouldn't have this channel. Literally, all of this is because he made me do this. So, Intel is, first of all, I do think Intel will stay around for a long time, and I have spoken, and I have some acquaintances that work at Intel. I'm not holding Intel. I don't have any biases about it. But I have, a horse in the race. But I do think that Intel is here to stay. They're a good buy. Of course, with the market having a lot of downside, inevitably Intel is part of the scenery. It cannot avoid, being affected when rains. Everybody gets wet. In other words, what I'm saying right now, in general, it's not about Intel. I'm saying in general. And there's this sort of conversation about the small caps, if we're talking about Palantir, right? Oh, Palantir is doing very well. The whole rotation conversation, which maybe I should have spoken about this more. I probably should. I'm going to try. You know what, guys? I'm not, no promises, but I'll try and make a video about the whole rotation. And maybe the reason I haven't made a video about the rotation yet and how sort of the small caps should be doing all well, because first of all, it's not all the small caps. It's not everywhere you look. It's not, well, it kind of depends, depending on the sector. But all in all, and in my opinion, I think that's part of the hype, part of that sort of psychological thing that is actively happening in the market. And people often, it is part of the process. There is a lot of catch-up game that's going on, but I really don't see this as a rotation, and I do think and foresee a lot of the small caps, including Palantir. And guys, I've told you, we have this resistance here at 2907. This is suspicious. I mean, this does look like the start, like the price action wants to break out, right? It does look like the stock want to do well. But as I said earlier, and I've mentioned in some of the videos, we might as well see some of this behavior on both Tesla and Palantir going into earnings, all the way into earnings, and only then the market will decide one way or another. And another thing you need to understand, that the market is structured right now, and this is, again, I'm not saying one thing or another, but I am saying that you should notice, not every asset, even having a beat on earnings and revenue, will have a good outcome on the price action. A lot of this stuff could be already priced in. I'm just gonna kind of say that. And what you expect of the market is to see it happen. If you don't have a good forecast, forward forecast, that also could have a lot of implications on the price action as well. Don't forget about these factors. It sounds worth buying. Look at Boeing still. Boeing, wow, Boeing. I don't have Boeing in my favorites. Boeing is such a unique instance. I was thinking actually of making a dedicated video. Boeing, people, I'm a lot more bullish on Boeing than people realize. Ladies and gents, you need to understand that Boeing is deep in bed with the government. There is almost no plane, no project, no big gun or something of that nature that Boeing does not have a part in. And those of you who don't know, Boeing was tasked with, yes, I'm not kidding, Google it, a force field for the military, a force field. Can you imagine for how long that project can be prolonged with all the nonsense that they're having with their planes and all that, with their sort of aviation sec part? That's what I'm saying. You know, Boeing guys, Boeing are gonna be good, but of course with all the mess, Boeing. Last time I checked, were a falling knife, and I still think there is more room before it's a good buy. So no rush with Boeing right now. I'm not even going to bother looking at the chart right now. It's sort of nonsensical. Plus, remember, Boeing will also be affected by the same factors that I'm telling you. Imagine an example I just used the other day. Gene, shout out to you. He told me it's a good example. Essentially, that you cannot worry about the health of your flower when your soil is poisoned. Okay, so right now we're kind of, we should worry about the soil, we should worry about the indices, we should worry about the overall market before we look at the individual assets. But Boeing is a prolonged story, and I don't think it's found the bottom yet. Last time I've checked. It's all that stuff, and the bow is still alive. Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's it, ladies and gents. Those of you who stayed all this, all this time, shout out to you. You're all legends. I hope this was not too boring, not too tedious, and I hope I was not rambling too long. And that's it. Those who are not, or rather new to the channel, not familiar, but please like, subscribe, ring the bell, move it to everything, so you can join the further streams. And that's it. You'll be up to speed on what my thoughts are on the market. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Peace out.